think we are probably okay to go. Just to confirm, Colette, when we're ready to go.
Yeah, live stream precise are ready to go live just when you are, Chair, so just start.
Perfect. Okay, let's do that. Excellent. Thank you so much. Right. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the SPA's Complaints and Conduct Committee. We will follow the agenda. So I think in terms of apologies today, we've got an apology from Katrina Stewart. And Colette, I've not been notified of any other apologies.
That's all the apologies for the
Fantastic. But obviously we've got representation from Police Scotland with us today, SPA, the PERC, and I believe we will have HMICS with us as well if we don't have Carly Bruce with us already.
Yeah, they're already on the call, Chair.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, right. So before we do anything else, we need to do our declarations of interest and any connections. So are there any declarations of interest or any connections? I can see none. And I have not been notified of any other business. So then we have to make the decision on taking business in private for the items 11 through 15. And I would just like to invite members to agree of taking these items in private in accordance with section 20 of the SPA standing orders. And I see no objections to that. So which leads us into items under the heading of 2, so minutes and actions from previous meetings. We had a meeting of the Complaints and Conduct Committee, which was held on the 5th of September 2024. And can I please invite members to approve the draft minute of that committee as an accurate record? Yes. I think members are content to approve. Thank you very much. Thank you again very much, Fiona, for stepping in and chairing that meeting, because I was obviously an apology during that session. So thank you for that. And then we have got the public minute from the private meeting also held on the 5th of September. And again, can I please invite members to approve the draft public minute from the private meeting? And again, I see no objections. That's good. Right, well, this leads us into the public rolling action log. And we have got a number of actions here which are proposed for closure. Given that we do have updates for each of them, and for some of them we've got quite lengthy updates, I was just going to ask if there are any objections to the closure of any of these actions. Fiona, please.
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to find my hand. On agenda item 7, I wondered if we could wait until because I'm not sure that I'm seeing what was in the action plan directly related to what was in the paper. I'm not saying it's not. I think I would benefit from having a dialogue and conversation and understanding the implications and the meanings, of within that, to make sure that actually what we've asked for in terms of consideration of current complaint categorisation types, I would benefit if I may, Chair.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Fiona. Thank you very much for that. And again, sort of, having obviously read the papers for agenda item 7, I do believe that there was likely to be some obviously follow-up actions, I think, which are kind of similar to the ones that we currently have, but maybe just a bit more specific based on information provided under 7. So absolutely. So why don't we keep these open until we've had the agenda item 7, and then we will see what additional actions, if any, are rising from that, which may supersede the ones that we currently have on the action log. So that means that we're keeping the effectively there's about 4 items there that I believe relate to agenda item 7. So we're keeping them open until we've had the conversation, and then we'll make a judgment call once we've had agenda item 7. Fantastic, thank you. But the other ones, I think we're content to close. Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so this then leads us on to the next agenda item, which is so decisions taken since last meeting. There are none. And this leads us on into our first substantive item, which is the Police Scotland Professional Standards Annual Performance Report, which covers quarter 2, obviously, of this year. And that's over to you, Stuart and Helen, I believe.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll maybe just do a slight introduction for some of the performance report, and Helen's going to go through more of the detail with that. What I'll probably start off in saying is that the first line would indicate there's a slight decrease in complaints. That's probably not entirely accurate, and we are still seeing an increase across this year, and it's the way that it was reported into this board is that it's probably not caught up with itself yet. So the most up to date is we are seeing a gradual increase what we've reported throughout the meetings of this year, and that's something that we're really conscious of, and I think we need to be able to, in a position maybe how we report this more accurately at the time of the meeting is something that we've been discussing internally about how we do that and make sure that's correctly portrayed and particularly in these papers. So again, what I would say, and I know Helen's going to get into quite a lot of the detail, is we are still an extremely busy place in relation to the bits and pieces of, particularly in the conduct area, which I know we'll come to later on in the meeting. But what I would say is that we are seeing an increase in our conduct workload in relation to hearings, and disposals for that has probably increased quite rapidly in recent times as well. We've taken on quite a significant amount of work in relation to training and awareness raising for chairs and that, which has been really helpful in how we deal with that demand from conduct. So I'm pleased to see that going forward. Continue to do a great deal of, obviously, organisational learning aspects from CHRs, and obviously regular meetings with PERC colleagues. I know item 7 is going to cover a bit more about the non-criminal complaints, so if it's okay when we get to that part, I'll maybe say a bit more about some of the actions that we've been trying to take and some of the work that's ongoing regarding non-criminal aspects later on. But if it's in order, I'll pass to Helen to maybe go into a bit more depth in the report.
Stuart, thank you very much. Helen, over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chair, and good morning, committee members. I'm very pleased to be with you this morning to present our performance report for quarter 2. I will just introduce one of my team members, Superintendent Alan Somerville, who's joined us on the screen this morning, who has responsibility for the oversight of performance matters across the PSD business area, and his team support the compilation of the reports to you. So he has joined us for the first time this morning. I'm hoping that the format and the presentation of the report is now becoming more familiar, as we have now got into a sort of routine in terms of the material that is presented, but also always very happy to receive any feedback or points. As per our previous reports, we have provided a top-level summary of activity in relation to preventions and professionalism programme, dashboards, and also the appendix that are attached at the back of the report. I am keen this morning to focus on some of the volume challenges within professional standards business area, whilst providing you with reassurance about the assessment and progress of work and our plans ahead in terms of resource and changes to our approaches, which I know will be discussed further as well as we move through the agenda. I stress that we recognise the important contribution that we make to service delivery and public trust and confidence in policing through the effective and efficient response to complaints, conduct and other PSD matters. And my team and I are committed to continue to enhance and develop our approaches, maximising our efforts around this whilst managing the volume that we receive. So moving on to the report, I just wanted to reflect on page 2, where we have the service delivery dashboards, and this shows an overview of the volume coming into professional standards, those that coming into the gateway unit, and then fed out to the different teams within the professional standards. Of note, our gateway referrals have remained a fairly consistent volume to quarter 2 of last year, albeit, and notably in terms of the complexities and the matters within it, continue to present us with clear requirements in terms of the progression of these activities. Again, I note the increase in terms of ACU referrals, quite significant increase, showing a 68 at Q2 last year, up to 85 at this year. And also of particular note in terms of our vetting applications or vetting processes that have increased by over 1,500 since this time last year, probably reflected in terms of the recruitment coming into Police Scotland, but huge demand, the fact that we're showing over 5,000 vetting applications at the halfway point of the year. If I go on to the next dashboard, this just gives that sort of high level summary across the sort of complaint data. And I don't intend to pause any further on this page than other just to highlight, as shown, the increase in assault and excessive force volumes year to date, which is of significant note. And I will comment further on that as I move through the report. Moving on to page 5, which gives you the overall sort of summary in terms of complaints received, and just following on from the ACC's comments at the start of this item. We did run the figures again on the 4th of November, and this is showing that for Q2, at the end of Q2, we've received 3,720 complaints against the police. So that is an increase of 385 in Q2, as shown against the data as it's presented. Part of this is just due to the demand volume and working through in terms of the uploading onto our systems, and that slight delay in respect of when the data is taken from the systems. So what that does show us is that that increase puts us at 3.3% below the previous year to date, but does still reflect a high level in terms of against our 5-year average of an increase of 209 matters. And so that does show that it remains at a high level, similar to Q1 and Q2 of the previous years. And as I say, the previous Q2 has seen us receive over 1,800 complaints, so maintaining that volume. Clearly, these figures will be refreshed and presented when we come to the Q3 report in respect of that. And I guess it just shows that moving picture in terms of the matters that are coming into us. And obviously, we're keen to present the most up-to-date and accurate figures to the board in relation to that. In addition to that, our NCARI, which is our initial sort of triage point, the National Complaint and Resolution Unit, over the last few months, we have been really seeing the need in order to reflect resource and demand, reflect resource into that unit to make sure that we can keep on top of the referrals and the complaint matters as they're coming into us. We recognise the benefit of early engagement and early resolution to matters, and we continue to try to work to make sure that we have sufficient resource within our NCARI teams to really be able to enhance opportunities to resolve matters at that earliest point. I would highlight some of the figures that are within the report in terms of the FLR rates in relation to this year so far, but would highlight we still have opportunity just given the volume that we're currently working through in respect of further opportunities to FLR matters as we continue to move through our engagement with complainers through that. As I've already commented, chart 3 just shows the details of the complaints per quarter, but as I say, for Q2, we will make sure that that's updated and reflected in the next report, and it does show our continual maintained levels of increased matters coming in. Moving on to our emerging trends on page 7 of the report. The report breaks down a number of them. I would just highlight the discriminatory behaviour allegations. While we are seeing a slight decrease on the previous year to date, it still remains above the 5-year average. And as you can see at the end of the report, we've done a deeper breakdown and analysis of the discriminatory behaviour, the 158 received in year 2023-24. And again, I'll maybe add some further comment when I get to that point in the report. In terms of other emerging trends, quality of service allegations were noted to be at an elevated level during 23-24. However, volumes within service delivery and service outcomes have reduced significantly from the previous year to date. And to a lesser degree, this is also true of policy procedure allegations. Continuing with emerging trends, excessive force, 323 allegations received year to date, which is an increase from the previous year to date and the 5-year average. We have done a deeper dive into these that haven't identified any single factor or theme to explain these increases. Almost all of them relate to an arrest, potentially handcuffs being too tight, or bruising that has been caused during arrest are the most common themes within the complaint summaries. And again, we continue to monitor and track those matters, engaging with our colleagues elsewhere elsewhere in the organisation in respect of that. Also, sticking with the emerging trends, assault allegations remain above the 5-year average, with 268 allegations received year to date. As you know, all allegations of on-duty assault are submitted to PERC under the Article 3 protocol for assessment, scrutiny and potential investigation to provide that enhanced transparency and independence. Again, and as with the excessive force allegations, we have reviewed the summary of these and again, not identified any single factor or theme to explain the increase. But again, we continue to monitor that. The report then continues to outline any further emerging trends, irregularity and procedure allegations that I don't intend to go into in any more detail as they are articulated within the report. And finally, at the bottom of page 8, we've reflected again a new measure put into the last performance report just in relation to allegations linked to stop and search. At the end of Q1, we reported 34 allegations linked to 21 separate complaints, and at this point we report 62 allegations reported linked to 45 separate complaints. So a similar volume seen in Q2 in respect of that. But again, it is noted that overall a particularly low volume in the context of all of our complaints received, and also the average of 8,255 stop search incidents recorded by Police Scotland each quarter, which is reported elsewhere. Moving on in terms of the emerging trends, just to highlight on page 9, chart 8 displays the full breakdown of allegations received year to date by allegation type, and highlights that some of the points within the text there. And again, I don't intend to go into any more detail in respect of that during the meeting today, as I previously have covered in previous committees, and so we continue to monitor and have a look at the trends emerging through the allegations. Moving on to page 10 and service delivery, allegations upheld are at an increased rate of 15.8% compared to the previous year to date at 14.7%. This measure does relate to completed criminal and non-criminal allegations, and clearly as we continue to work through some of the demand that we have within the area at the moment, that figure may well change, and we'll continue to monitor that. Analysis of themes and trends in upheld complaints are discussed at our Professionals and Preventions Operations Group, and we do then consider in terms of preventative messages or any training or action that's required in relation to that. And often we feed that through in terms of the standard that we continue to produce, but also to reports to divisional commanders and dashboards across the organisation to maximise visibility and key points of learning. The report then goes on to detail the timescales, compliance in relation to our position with that, and the higher level rationale that's provided in relation to the matters that took over 365 days to complete, which are similar to those reported in Q1. But again, we continue to keep a focus and review in respect of that. In addition to that, and as we will discuss later with the improvement plan moving forward and the additionality in terms of some of the resources planned in relation to Operation Glade, we do hope again that that will give us opportunity to improve in relation to our timescale compliance around that. To give you an update on our increase in terms of resources, we have now got 20 successful candidates that will be staff investigators that will be joining us in our professional standards non-criminal complaints team. A number of those will be arriving with us in December, and we very much look forward to welcoming them and getting them started to help support our work around Operation Glade and increasing the capacity to manage that demand within our complaints volume. So it's good to see that work having moved forward and progressing. Of note, we recently took on some additional staff within our vetting unit as well in October, and they are already making a clear contribution in the demand I spoke about at the start within vetting, seeing some of our backlog or outstanding matters within vetting already dropped by 1/3 over the last month. And clearly I'm hoping that that will also translate within our complaint area as well. The report does detail an improvement in terms of CHR performance at 64.2% allegations subject to CHR being found by PERC to have been handled to a reasonable standard, which is an increase from the previous year to date. However, the volume of CHRs does remain low and is down 22.2% previous year to date, with approximately 1.9% of complaints reported being subject to a complaint handling review. Moving on, I just pause on page 11, just again, a new measure that was reported, which does show in relation to the results from the Complaints User Satisfaction Survey and reporting an increase in terms of this year to date in terms of the satisfied with the response from PSD over Q2. Pausing briefly on the PERC referrals, just to highlight that we do see some increase in terms of the serious injury following police contact category, although it is noted that the number of investigations taken forward by PERC has reduced, so that obviously correlates to having assessed and reviewed. The assessment is that police involvement was necessary and proportionate, and that the injury was not attributed to the actions of the officers involved. Clearly that assessment done by PERC in relation to those matters that we refer through. Also, the figures provided for the Article 3 referrals in relation to that is obviously reflective of what we're seeing in the increase in the assault allegations that are coming through, showing that increase in relation to those matters referred through to PERC. Moving on to page 13 and 14 and the conduct unit, just to highlight 76 police officers suspended at the end of Q2 and 117 subject to duty restrictions. We continue to try and develop the information provided to you around our conduct unit and the work that's undertaken, giving you the breakdown in chart 16 of the assessments. And while volume has dropped off slightly in terms of assessment, what we are seeing is an increase in terms of matters going forward to investigation, presenting that demand in terms of the conduct team to take forward those investigations. I would like to note and give my apologies to the committee in relation to a data error on page 14 of the average time under investigation. I do apologise for that. That was due to a different measure being reported on. As I say, this is early days in us presenting to you the average time frames within our conduct area, and I'm very happy to continue the discussion how to best we can do that. But that figure should show 95, not as it is reported. As it is reported, has taken into additional matters moving towards proceedings. So apologies for that, and hopefully that can be noted in the minutes in respect of this meeting. So that should show 95. That is a small increase in Q1 reports, and I think that shows the complexity of matters and also the volume. But again, happy to discuss that further. My final point that I would like to touch on this morning relates to Appendix C, which is the analytical report that's been provided on the discriminatory behaviour breakdown of 2023-24. I think it's really important that we reflect in terms of the trend analysis that has kind of led us to undertaking this work, and also reflect on how we continue to work towards addressing this, obviously in view of the wider organisational stance of being anti-racist and anti-discriminatory organisation. So the allegations of discriminatory behaviour, as we know, have shown a general upward trend. In terms of the number, where while it has increased, I think it is important to consider the broader context of overall complaints. So the overall allegations of just over 10,000 in that year, and the discriminatory behaviour allegations of 159. But as I say, that has shown that increase. We can reflect on potential several factors that may contribute to that observed trend, and clearly we're continuing to review and see if we can understand that. So that might be increased public awareness and willingness to report such incidents, and of such we clearly welcome that. The improved reporting mechanisms, and also just the kind of discussions and the importance of the sort of review and understanding in terms of these matters, so that we can make sure that we take forward learning in respect of that. Obviously, it's crucial to note that an increase in reported allegations doesn't necessarily indicate an increase in discriminatory incidents, and we continue to encourage people to come forward and report to us so that we can continue to reflect and learn. The report does give a bit of a breakdown into geographical areas where we've noted volume in respect of the increases, and also race, as that was the highest volume of subtype within the discriminatory behaviour, as detailed in the 88 that are covered within the report there. But it is all detailed within there. And as I say, very happy to take any questions in respect of that. I would just add one final comment that I think it's really important that we continue to reflect and learn. My next steps in respect of this is to continue to try to understand and reflect. We do note that it's only a very low number that are upheld, the 2.5% upheld in total, albeit I do caveat that some are still ongoing, so that figure might change as we move forward in terms of the investigation. And we have given you the examples within the report of the 3 that have been upheld and the action that was taken within the organisation about that. But I am proposing that I'll continue to engage, and I'm keen to engage following this analytical report with colleagues in Policing Together, share this review, share some of the detail with them, and see how we can continue to take steps forward to share that learning, whether that be through our standard newsletter or highlighting key learning and improvements. But Chair, I think that's everything from myself that I wish to cover, and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Very much, Helen, for this really comprehensive report. I really appreciated, obviously, the report, but also the narrative. So with you highlighting the things that you think are important to us. So very much appreciated. There was a lot covered, and I'm sure colleagues will have questions. I see, Paul, you'd like to come in.
Yeah, can I ask, I'm looking at the data on page 14 about the misconducts that are completed, and it's like 46 completed in the last 2 quarters compared to 6 in the 3 quarters of last financial year. Now, what's the explanation for this? Are you just getting through these more efficiently, or has there been a spike or anything like that?
Sorry, can I just double check where you're reading that? Did you say page 14?
Page 14, the misconduct hearings, and it's the conduct unit continued. So page 35 of everything.
Yep. So you mean in terms of the...
It's date reg 10 completed. There's a table there.
Yep. So that table is to articulate the ongoing matters that are still within the conduct unit, and the date range details the date in which they commenced. So what that date shows us is that 46 of the matters in conduct at the moment are from quarter 1 and 2 of this year, but does also articulate our longer running cases, because I am keen that we can show that to the board in respect of that, where there is additional sort of complexities around these matters, but we continue to try and take them forward.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. So there isn't anything untoward with this. This is sort of like every single time, of course. Yes, sorry, I'm not quite awake yet. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Fiona, please.
Yeah, a couple of things from me, and the issue on the race discrimination, Helen. You talked about 2% being upheld. I wonder, so that feels a very low number, and the question I have then is, if we're aiming to be an anti-racist organisation, and if we're saying we're institutionally racist, what are you trying to tell me when you're saying we've got a very low number of complaints about race in terms of discrimination, and of that very low number, 2% are upheld? How confident are you that the investigation and maybe the question, so how confident are you that that's a good investigation? And what do the complainants say when you go back and to 98% of them and say, no, we weren't?
No, thank you. A very good question, and it's one that I'm continuing to kind of consider and work on. I have looked through some of these, and I have been impressed by the level of investigation and the detail in which we would go into these matters. But what I would like to do as a next step of this, because I can understand that sort of comment and that reflection in respect of that, is to engage with some of our Policing Together colleagues to maybe share a bit more of this, to try and understand. But also, is there an opportunity that we can engage with some of these individuals? Again, I don't know the correlation or the translation across into our user satisfaction survey from this particular one. So I think we've got some further opportunities to continue to develop that, because actually I could think there could be some themes that we could be able to develop out around communication, around explaining the work that we're doing. You know, a lot of them relate potentially to vehicle stops. So actually, how do we engage and explain why we've maybe stopped somebody, but also be able to take into account their views within that. So I think it's work in progress, and I'm very happy to kind of come back to the committee once I've had some further discussions with Policing Together colleagues and maybe being able to share a little bit more of the detail with them.
No, Helen, that would be really helpful, and I'm interested in the data linkages. So I recognise that we're on a journey, and it's not always easy, but the linkages between user satisfaction, complaints, protected characteristics, and being able to layer that on, and it's probably across, whether it is Policing Together, the People Committee, Policing and Performance, so that we can actually begin to get a picture. So the vehicle search and the stop and search, do we have that by protected characteristic?
So basically, this is when maybe a member of the public has said, I believe it's because of my race, I believe it's because of my nationality. In relation to that, that's how that's recorded. As you know, that there's a big lot of work ongoing around Centurion and how we record these matters in our complaint handling form to be able to capture all of that, which is reliant on some of the upgrades and the transitions that we're working through within some of that. So I hope we're on a journey to improve that, and we're trying to work very hard with the data. So this is when somebody kind of volunteers that information to us at this point, that we record it under the discrimination element within that.
But, and it's maybe more a policing and performance question. However, are the police stop and searches and vehicle stops, do you record protected characteristics of who's been stopped? So do we know how many stop and searches of the 8,000, I don't know if it's 8,000 a quarter you said, are from people from are women, are men, black minority ethnic communities, people with disability?
I'm very happy to take that away and ask, because obviously that is reported through another committee. What I've focused on is those that subsequently become a complaint within our data. So I wouldn't want to give you a definite answer in terms of that. I'm very happy to reflect on that.
That would be helpful, Helen. And can I just ask about and maybe it's not for this, maybe it's for another agenda item. I think in 2022, there were additional posts put in place to help with complaint investigation. And we were being assured that that would be the magic bullet and that things would improve. We've now got an additional resource. And that was also the change from local complaint investigation to centralised. How confident are you that the resources you have just now and the systems and processes you have just now will give you a contemporaneous, modern investigation system that meets the needs of the public?
Thank you. I see the ACC's put its hand up, and I know that there's some comments within Operation Glade report later. And ACC, I will, let you come in just 1 second. I guess there's one bit of it. We have been on that journey since 2021, as you kind of, rightfully say, in terms of it coming into PSD in respect of that. But obviously what we've seen since then is that huge increase in terms of demand and volume as well within it. But ACC, I'll let you come in. Go ahead, please. Oh, Chair, if that's all right.
Yes, of course, please.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Probably just there's probably a few things in here. I think we can't escape the complexity that we now face, and some things that have changed quite dramatically over a period of time. I've had a number of conversations as well with PERC colleagues, and I think about timelines in relation to us. I think are stretched, and we probably need a bit of a revision in relation to that to be more on an equal footing with colleagues in PERC, but also in colleagues in other parts of the UK and how they investigate complaints of any nature. So I appreciate that there was an uplift of people at that time. I think the nature of our business has changed quite dramatically, even in that 2 years, and a lot of different approaches. So I'll maybe touch a bit more on agenda item 7 about some of the improvements that we want to make. but I think we do. We need this uplift just now to sort of support those that are in place. And the most important thing is the categorisation that we've done, particularly for the non-criminal side, is to make sure that we're investigating the right ones at the right time, which I think is a really important part. So I hope that this uplift of staff will go some way to improving that, and will take us forward a bit more of a more sustainable model for the future.
Grant, thanks. Chair, I have another one question, if I may. If there's a vehicle search or a stop and search or any interaction, how do people know how to complain about the way they've been treated?
So, Chair, if I could maybe answer a bit about that's one of the other things that we're looking at just now is how people complain to the police. And there is that opportunity about how someone could go and complain to an officer at the time. We have looked at how we take complaints in an online process, and predominantly the sort of feedback you get from members of the public is they do like to engage online. That's one of the things that we're looking at, is how do we make that a bit more understandable, but also give people options about what a complaint means as well, which again does come into our improvement plan going forward. If they were dissatisfied at the time, officers are advised to say, if you want to make a complaint about the police, here's how you would do that: online, call, or some people attend at a station. So I think that the part about how we do that online and explain to people what a complaint means is something that's going to be really important going forward as well.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Fiona and Stuart and Helen, for the questions and the answers. Really interesting there. If I maybe actually just pick up on some of it, so I've got some questions as well, and just some observations. But just linking that to your first question, Fiona, around the complaints around alleging discrimination, racial discrimination, etc., and the low rate of complaints actually being upheld within the space. Helen, I really welcome your thoughts on that. In terms of interrogating the quality of the investigations. I suppose the low rate of complaints upheld, either tells us that there is, maybe our investigations aren't as robust and our data is skewed, or maybe it tells us that actually the allegations made were not, could not be substantiated to the extent that they've been made. So we don't know which of this it is. That's not to say that there aren't potentially some other incidents where there might have been racial discrimination where people don't complain about. So, so it is a complex picture, but for the ones where people do take the time and make a complaint and come to us and say, look, we think this was racially or discriminatory. There's a degree of discrimination here, whether it's racial on the basis of race or nationality. For those cases, I think it might be quite good actually for the SPA to focus one of our dip sampling exercises on that. Apologies, there was a very long-winded way of coming into maybe, we could do an extra layer of assurance over these investigations, and just to get that better sense of, is it just us, not investigating these allegations properly and hence not opposing them, or is it just that for these cases actually, for these cases at the very least, it was right that a relatively low percentage of those was upheld. So maybe there's a thought there for our SPA colleagues, Darren, to see how we could maybe do some additional oversight from our perspective into these specific cases. And I'm sure that, Darren, you can work with with our police colleagues to see what's the best way to maybe structure a bit of an insight into that, if colleagues agree, just to give us that extra sort of triangulation point in that space, because it is so incredibly important. Darren, I see you nodding. Yeah. Okay. Good. Fantastic. I'll take that. I'll take that as an agreement to the suggestion. So that's good. And another thing that I do also really welcome is the new service metric which you've included, Helen, which you've pulled out in your presentation as well, talking about the satisfaction. Complainants satisfied or very satisfied with the response received from PSD by period. Now, can I just ask, and this is a daft classic question, what are the other categories within that we give respondents? I suppose, I take it dissatisfied and strongly dissatisfied are also options. Is there anything sort of in the middle ground?
So yes, sorry, Chair. Yes, I'm happy to see if we can maybe present some more kind of the fuller picture, I guess, around it. I guess we've been keen to track those elements within it. Alan, I don't know if you've got any comment or observation in relation to the user satisfaction survey and how else we might be able to show some of that data.
Yes, the categories, like you say, for all Police Scotland satisfaction surveys are very satisfied, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, and very dissatisfied. So we should be able to give a fuller picture of that.
Yeah, no, I understand, Darren. You're also suggesting that the suggestion has been made to present this data on an annual basis, so for the more well way. But I think it would be quite good in this space to just experiment a little bit, because I think, when it comes to a complaint, I mean, even if somebody is neutral, I think it's important for us to know, so that's good. And I do appreciate the trend information here as well as to how does this compare to the previous year to date as well. So that's good. Yeah. Really welcome, I think, the inclusion of this metric. Because the work was being done, and I don't think we've just really saw these metrics that, up until now. And once we have it running for a little bit longer, then, at that stage we can start talking about, well, how do we move that dial, and particularly if, sorry, another observation I had is I really welcome the additional investment into the space, and I really welcome your statements at the start that just really recognizing the importance of this work. So complaints are not just complaints, complaints are obviously, that's where a member of the public has taken the time to engage with Police Scotland after previous interaction. So they're incredibly useful, and you're absolutely spot on, I think, in terms of how Police Scotland deals with complaints. It is so important in terms of the perception of the wider service as well. So it's not an afterthought, and I think that's now coming, more and more strongly through in terms of the focus on improvement and the real focus on investment in the space, despite the, let's face it, really challenging financial situation, all across the service. So the fact that, you're getting 20 new people now, and then, you're still advertising, and you have had some internal transfers into the team as well, I think to me just really I'm encouraged by that, because to me that demonstrates that you are putting your money where your mouth. So whatever the expression is, but you are following through on your commitment in that space. So I really welcome that. And as I say, what would be really interesting to see is this, once we start hopefully with that extra resource, once we start seeing the average time of complaint handling going down, it would be interesting to kind of retrospectively obviously look in let's say 6 months time or years time to see if the satisfaction has been increasing, proportionately as well, because I would expect there to be some degree of correlation. So I think we're putting a lot of the building blocks are kind of being put in place just now for us to continue monitor the situation. And I'm really encouraged by, as I say, by the operational response to the challenge. So thank you for that. I don't have any further specific questions, as I say, because I think particularly your narrative, Helen, has been quite helpful. It's shown us where your focus is. Colleagues have asked some really good questions. I don't have any further questions just now. Just checking if anybody else has got any further questions on this agenda item. No, I see head shaking, so that's perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, this enables us to move on to the next agenda item, which is the SPA quarterly report. And that is being presented to us by Darren. Darren, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. So again, I'll, as usual, take the paper as read. This is the regular SPA quarterly report, including key statistics reflecting the position at the end of Q2 with comparison to the previous 7 quarters. Key observations in terms of the statistics specifically, as usual, we tend to receive generally low volumes of complaints in terms of relevant complaints and corresponding allegations. The numbers remain largely consistent over the period. And again, recognising those low volumes, the majority relate to senior officers, recognising our responsibilities also extended to complaints about the SPA, including forensic services. The majority of cases relate to on-duty complaints, a smaller minority relating to complainants' dissatisfaction with quality of service. And early stage resolution does continue to be an effective means of addressing complaints of a less serious nature. In terms of where things are right now, we have 5 relevant complaints which were ongoing at the end of quarter 1, although I'd note that 3 of those have since been closed. And I would just point to the timescales element within the report that considers the number of complaints that were closed over the closed during the reporting period, 2 of which were out with the 40 working day target, and we include explanation for the circumstances around about that. Other than the statistics, some of the key things I would note within the report, just to highlight again, our DIP sampling, which was mentioned a moment ago, is temporarily paused due to capacity challenges in the team. I'm pleased to note that we have recently successfully completed the recruitment process, and I have 2 very experienced colleagues going to be joining us either side of the Christmas break, and so we would hope to resume the DIP sampling in the new year. Another key piece of work that we've been doing over the last period is the completion of the committee annual report for 23-24, which I'll present later on. The report also covers the most recent meeting of the National Complaint Handling Development Group. That's chaired by Kate Stephen, who I know is on the call. Some really useful discussions taking place in that space, some of which indeed Police Scotland have alluded to already in the previous item, and we're due to meet again in early December. Finally, and as signposted last time, the report provides further details on a complaint handling review which the authority received recently. The PERC have since confirmed that they're satisfied that the recommendations and the learning points that were raised have been addressed. I provide a summary in the report, and I would note PERC typically publishes more detailed reports on a number of complaint handling reviews on its website. I'm assuming that the corresponding report here will also be included on their website. So that was all I really wanted to say here. I'm happy to take any questions.
Again, yeah, comprehensive report as usual. I think it's obviously standard format, not much fluctuation in complaints volumes for us. But good to know that you will be back to full capacity and that you will be able to restart the DIP sampling sort of as an independent, as I say, way for us to potentially sort of do our own digging to specific areas where we feel that that's warranted. So that's really quite welcome. I see, Fiona, you have got a question or a comment, please.
One small area of clarification. I'm not sure if I'm reading the report correctly, Darren. Are you saying in quarter 2 of this year we've had 3 complaints against senior officers?
Sorry, bear with me. I'll bring the report back up.
Sorry,
So
I
I've
should
got
probably
the
have given you
detail
a
here.
page.
No, that's okay. In quarter 2, there were indeed 3 relevant complaints received in relation to senior officers. Appreciating that not being able to go into specific details, I would advise though that what can amount to a relevant complaint against a senior officer can range from kind of more substantive complaints, but within the definition that also includes, and you'll have heard in previous kind of organisational learning reports that we've provided to the committee in the past, that technically a definition of a relevant complaint against a senior officer can include situations where individuals have written in, for example, to the Chief Constable and haven't had a response, which technically is in that space of a relevant complaint. Typically, though, correspondence direct to the Chief Constable or indeed other members of the executive by members of the public will often be handled by members of their direct team, will not necessarily have been directly handled by the senior officer themselves. We nevertheless follow up on these to ensure that actually the correspondence has been followed up by Police Scotland and will respond accordingly. But I think just for clarity, senior officer complaints will include a range from things like that, which can be relatively easily dealt with.
Okay, that's grand. Thanks, Darren. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. See no further questions on this agenda item. So that's great, which means that at this stage I can pass over to our colleagues from Park for the quotes in the report on the Police Scotland handling of complaints and investigation referrals. And Ilya, I believe you're speaking to this. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. Yes, I will. I will address the first part of the report in relation to the complaint handling. I'll take the report as read. The executive summary provides some of the key highlights, but I'll perhaps speak to some of the data in the report. In Q2, we've received 56 applications for complaint handling reviews, 19% increase on Q1, and bringing us back to the same levels as Q2 and Q3 of the last financial year. You will see that we've requested police complaint files in 53 of those cases during Q2. 94% of papers were provided on time. Indeed, the average time is 4.9 working days, which is good. But I think the report highlighted that in relation to the papers that we've received, we've noticed that in 64% of those cases, we had to make further requests for information. Some further detail included in the report in terms of the type of information that was routinely missing from the files. So we're working with our colleagues in PSD just to try to make sure that the files are complete and that the incomplete missing information does not delay the CHR process. And naturally, just trying to relieve some of the additional administrative burden on the PSD and the PERC teams. During Q2, you will see that 39 CHR reports were issued, together with 11 discretionary decisions. Those figures are very similar to Q4 of the last financial year. In terms of the findings, I think, as our colleagues from PSD highlighted, 64% of complaints we've reviewed were deemed to be handled to a reasonable standards. There have been no reconsideration directions issued during Q2. And in terms of the recommendations, 50 recommendations were made during this quarter, and I think looking at the breakdown of those recommendations, you'll see that the highest category is in relation to insufficient inquiries. That amounted to 52% of all recommendations made. The report provides a brief summary of the wider engagement work that is currently ongoing between PERC and PSD, including the National Complaint Handling Development Group and the liaison event, which is being organised in December. We've also took part in the PSD induction course this week. I think there will be a further course taking place in January to assist with the intake of the new complaint handlers, who are being recruited at the moment. And that probably the main highlights from my section of the report. I'm happy to pose at this stage if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Leah. Just to check whether my colleagues have got any questions for you at this stage. Fiona, please.
Thanks. Am I right in my assumptions about your report earlier that the quality of complaints handling is diminishing in what you're seeing? Or am I making too broad a statement, an assumption about that?
Well, Fiona, I think if we look at the figures 2 years ago when Police Scotland had a very good year in terms of complaint handling, reaching 74% reasonably handled, that certainly, I think, was the highlight, probably the highest figure that we've seen, certainly, probably since PERC was created, I probably would say, because it certainly was very reassuring. But the last financial year, you'll see that figure dipped to 57%. So This year so far, the figure is rising to 64% at the moment, and certainly if we can reach the highs that we had 2 years ago, and that would be fantastic. So in terms of, is the quality diminishing? Well, the figures would suggest that it's improving on the last year. It's certainly maybe not quite as good as it was 2 years ago, but certainly we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, that's helpful. So room for improvement, but the pattern is helpful and positive.
Yep.
Grant, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, for the clarification. Really good point to note. My ears pricked up a little bit, Ilya, when you said that you're also recruiting investigators and reviewers. Apologies if I'm not quite getting your terminology right there. So you're looking to expand your team as well? Is that too?
Sorry, Katharina. I was referring to a PSD.
Sorry, right, okay.
Looking to recruit additional staff into their team rather than our team.
Okay, no, that's absolutely fine. I was just wondering whether there's another development I wasn't aware of, but no, thank you for that. Okay, I have got no further questions on this. So I think with this we can pass over to Raymond for an update on the statutory referrals.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Good morning, folks. So I'll take the document as read. As per Ilya's comment, there is an executive summary on page 2, which covers the main parts, which we'll probably pick through to give the committee some reassurance in terms of the PIRC input in this. So you'll note on page 17, there's a marked increase in referrals from Police Scotland from Q2. We've not been able to identify any discernible reason for that. It just appears to be operational demand, which has led to that. So there's nothing concerning coming out that we have identified, or no patterns. You'll also note that when you move on to page 18, incapacitant spray is pretty notable there in terms of the volume. It has increased the use of PAVA. Currently, they're sitting at 53 and taken over the last 2 quarters, it's sitting at 91. And when you contextualise that against the whole of last year, it was at 138. So the use of PAVA appears certainly to be on the increase based on these 2 quarters. However, to give some reassurance, no investigations have been undertaken by PIRC. The assessments have identified it's all in line with operational training and guidance. So whilst the numbers are higher, the reflective review of that would indicate that it has been used as intended. So that is hopefully some reassurance that we can provide in that regard. You'll also notice that the presentation of firearms is up in this quarter as well. Again, none of them moved to investigations, and they were all in line with what would be expected there. So again, I suppose some context round about that number. On the whole, we progressed 4 investigations from these matters that came from statutory referrals from Police Scotland, 2 in relation to taser, 1 in relation to a firearms discharge, and 1 in relation to a serious injury. That obviously doesn't include the Article 3 referrals that are thereafter changed through the COPFS statutory instrument. So there is other investigations that relate to policing activity that come from that regard. Stepping through the document onto the recommendations section, you'll notice quite a bit of detail in there. I'll take it as read, but encouraging to comment that there is no outstanding recommendations from Police Scotland. The work that's ongoing, supported by ACC Houston's team in the joined up conversation, we see that recommendations piece moving quite efficiently, and we welcome that for obvious reasons. And finally, I'd probably just comment on some of the stakeholder engagement. The MOU in terms of Police Scotland and PIRC is underway for a refresh. It's with Police Scotland, I understand, at the moment. It's nearing completion, so we'll hopefully be in a position to advise when that is complete. And the final point I'd probably raise is in terms of CPD, and it's just to note the thanks of PIRC and to Police Scotland and ACC Houston for supporting CPD for PIRC. We have staff from the Scottish Police College here today delivering some investigative training, so it was just to note that and essentially express our thanks in this forum for it. Other than that, Chair, I've not got a lot else I could add to that without diving into the real detail, which I'm sure you'll have already considered.
Great. Thank you very much, Raymond, for this, for the report and for the narrative, for the presentation as well. Really appreciate it. I think again, there's some really good sort of editorial lines from you there as well, putting things into perspective around the numbers that are coming through. Really encouraged to hear about the MOU. That was something that I picked up as well, reading the report, thinking seems like, particularly listening to Stuart's and Helen's kind of earlier comments around the nature of the business is shifting. It's the broader picture. So I'm really quite encouraged by the fact that the MOU, very important documents that set out the relationship between the PSD and PERG, that such as an MOU, that they are under constant kind of review as well, just to reflect the operational needs of both parties, but also the priorities and effectively how do both parties deliver and what they need to deliver within this system-wide complaints landscape. So really, really encouraging. I don't have any further questions. Again, you've been quite explicit around no outstanding recommendations. So again, I do think that that's quite commendable as well. So things are obviously being actioned in a timely fashion. And other than that, I didn't have any further questions on this. Just checking whether there's any questions from my colleagues on this. No. And again, just to emphasize, just a personal reflection, the real value that this independent oversight by PERG over these, obviously, the value of statutory referrals, as in certain matters are being referred to for a particular reason. And, as we've explored in some of the earlier sessions of this committee, the fact that something isn't being taken forward to the investigation is already a good thing. So even though things are being referred, the fact that it's a really small percentage that is being taken to investigation doesn't mean that the other things kind of fall by the wayside. An assessment had already, generally is already made. So there is a degree of comfort that we can kind of take from that as well. So and I think that to me, that just continues to be a really important message, that it's no, every case that's referred to is being assessed. It's just for a small percentage, there is that requirement to investigate further. And I think, as I say, that's really reassuring. I think it should be reassuring to members of the public and basically everybody who's interested in that. So that's really helpful. Okay, I see no further comments or questions, which means that we can move on to the next agenda item. Actually, the next agenda item that we had down there, we have agreed that will be so agenda item 6 will be discussed at the next committee. It's been decided to defer that item to the February 2025 committee meeting. So which means we're into agenda item 7, which is the PERG 6-stage process audit action and improvement plan. And I think this, obviously, quite a few of the actions are kind of riding on this agenda item. I know that sorry, I'll pass over to you, Stuart, in a second, but I was reflecting a little bit on the title of the agenda item, and actually part of that is the response to the PERG audit, but a big part of that is also Operation Glade. So it's bigger than just, I think, what the title suggests. So really quite interested in getting stuck into this agenda item. And Stuart, I'll pass over to you. Stage.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. If it's with your permission, I'll probably really cover off the 10 recommendations part first, which I would ask Kate to probably provide an update on that, where we sit with them, because it is that part of work that's been ongoing and we can give responses to that. And if it's okay, I'll come in and speak a bit more about Glade and the improvement plan that we've been trying to deliver, along with a few actions that we've taken over the last quarter.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. So in relation to the most recent PERG audit on the 6-stage process, which obviously relates to action 2 from the September meeting, and I'll provide that update. So I'll take the paper as read, and I'll kind of cover through the recommendations in turn. So in respect of recommendation 1, so the update there was around about discussion with our channel development lead. So essentially that request has now been approved as of Friday of last week. And implementation of that is imminent in respect of this recommendation. So I'm confident that we'll have that in place in the coming weeks, and certainly that should hopefully be discharged during our, for the next committee meeting. Moving on to recommendation 2, in respect of reviewing the existing online complaint form with a view to introducing more options around about gender. So there's a lot of work on this. We are very dependent on the Centurion version 8, which is the indicative timeline in relation to that coming online is summer 2025. So once that's in place, we'll be in a position to fully discharge this recommendation. And just for the assurance of the committee, the genders categorisation in relation to that will be taken from the Scottish Census. So that will all be included and will be online once we have Centurion version 8. In relation to recommendation 3, which obviously relates to the initial complaint investigation acknowledgement letter, including an explanation of next steps. So the final draft, I know that the update on the paper is that the initial draft is at an advanced stage. I'm now in receipt of the final draft of that letter. That's been completed, and the plan is to present that at the next National Complaint Handler Development Group, which is the group that I chair, a few weeks post this committee meeting. The next meeting is due to meet on the 5th of December, and once that's approved through that forum, that recommendation will be proposed for discharging. In terms of recommendation 4, that relates to the enhancing the existing 6-stage form to prompt and carry to secure perishable evidence at the earliest opportunity. This recommendation 2 is all but complete. We're moving to testing in the east region of the country as of next week, actually, to iron out any glitches in the system before scaling this up nationally. So again, one that is very close to discharge. Moving on to recommendation 5, which is around about separating the complainer contact and inquiry log into 2 distinct logs. Same position as the recommendation 4, so that'll be subject to the testing and is nearing discharge also. Looking at recommendation 6, which is developing the supporting guidance to accompany the new 6-stage form that's been developed by PSD. This work is at an advanced stage. It's clearly interdependent with the new 6-stage form, which, as I've said, we're going to be testing and we would want to implement in the first instance to ascertain if there's any further amendments required to the guidance document. But that work is around 75% complete, so in a really good place in relation to that recommendation. In relation to recommendation 7, around about revising the guidance to provide greater clarity on the process for dealing with criminal complaints involving a mix of criminal and non-criminal complaints. So again, this recommendation is all but complete. There have been discussions ongoing with PERT colleagues around about that, and again, that will be presented to the next National Complaint Handling Development Group for discussion in relation to our proposals around about that, which involve obviously the letters to complainers. Moving on to recommendation 8, which is around about us conducting a performance data review to take account of increased demand and the existing resources to establish an evidence-based proposal for KPIs dealing with different types of complaints. So again, this recommendation remains ongoing. Clearly, having only just introduced the categorisation of complaints in the last 6 months, we're working hard on the baseline data capture to enable us to establish an evidence-based proposal around KPIs for the future. And obviously, the backlogs that we're currently experiencing all kind of impact on that, but it's a work ongoing in relation to recommendation 8, and I anticipate that'll take slightly longer to be able to discharge than the others. In relation to recommendation 9, which is around about revising the guidance on the identification, recording and dissemination of learning, including the use of positive terminology, this recommendation again is all but complete and will be presented at the next National Complaint Handling Development Group for discussion around about the work that we've done in relation to that. And moving on to recommendation 10, around about strengthening the current guidance on the QA process to seek and ensure all complaint files contain an auditable trail of quality assurance by a senior officer. This recommendation 2 is all but complete and again will be presented at the next National Complaint Handling Development Group for discussion. And I'm confident at the next committee meeting, a number of these recommendations will be ready for discharge for reporting at the next meeting. There is a meeting meeting scheduled between PSD and PERC for next week, actually the 20th of November, to provide assurance and evidence of the work undertaken to enable next steps towards the potential implementation of several of the recommendations. And that's the update for the most recent PERC audit. I'm happy to take any questions in relation to that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the presentation as well. It sounds like there's an enormous amount of work that's happening. I think the update is quite clear. We understand sort of the timeline, so that's really, really helpful. It's good to know when things are expected to be landing. We understand the dependencies on the system as well, so that's, I think, has been quite a consistent message, and certainly not, the situation is not unique, where we just need that better technology to assist us with all of the enhancements to the process that, you know, and to the outcomes effectively of the process that we would like to see. So that's quite welcome. I don't have any questions. I'm just checking if colleagues have got any questions on this specifically. No, again, quite self-explanatory. Thank you very much. Paul spoke too soon. Paul, please.
No, it's not a question. It's just, is this the item that you needed to read across to the action log?
I think it is, but this is...
It's one of the actions, yeah. I think this relates to, I think, action 2 from the September meeting.
I think it's a good prompt, Paul.
Whereas for me, it was the action from the 6th of June, and there's writing in red, and then the update on revised approach to complaint categorisation triage. But I don't know if Stuart's going to cover that in his response.
Yeah. I would maybe suggest we get Stuart to comment, and then I was going to pull up the actions and go through and see if they have been satisfied. That's okay with you, Paul. It's great. Very good, thank you. So yes, Stuart, over to you.
Yeah, thanks again. I'm going to probably focus on what is section 3 of the paper that relates to this agenda item, and about Operation Blade, which is an improvement plan which is run as a gold structure by myself, overseeing PSD as the executive lead for professionalism. What I would start off in saying is that this is focused predominantly the work on the non-criminal complaints and the backlog that Police Scotland have faced in relation to this. I don't lose sight of the fact is that it is quite an unacceptable backlog for us to have, which is sitting there on the paper. You see it says over 1,000, and it will have varied slightly since this paper was submitted, but has for some time sat about the 1,000 mark. Now, there's a number of reasons for that, which I will touch on as we go on, but what the purpose of myself pulling together this since I've come into post is to try and how do we improve this, and how do we, one, make sure that we're not missing something that's in there that's really important, that we can share with our service and the public who have had the, had taken it to make that complaint, that how we are dealing with that and ensuring that we're able to provide an explanation to some of those complaints. And that, I think, is the important part here. This is about making sure that we answer the right things at the right time. So part of the work that we've done with this was looking at how can we improve, and Helen's already touched on it about investigators that are being brought in through some funding bids that will increase our capability of answering some of these. But one of the biggest things we've done in an initial conversation with this was conversations with the PERC in relation to the categorisation of some of these complaints, and that has been of great assistance to us about how we take that forward. And that has allowed us to focus on what we need to, example, Cat A, Cat B, Cat A+, really essential that we try and progress those as soon as possible. We also done quite a lot of work with this in relation to benchmarking with other forces, and also the Scottish Public Services Ombudsman in relation to an approach that they carried out a number of years ago when faced with quite a large backlog as well. And as part of this, we engaged by letter or email with a number of complainants who had not had their complaint allocated for quite a lengthy period of time. And the reason for that was, one, to make sure our individuals still willing to engage in that complaint process, because things do change, and I think there needs to be a very pragmatic approach here. Things may have changed for individuals going forward, and it was to make sure that we are still pursuing the correct things at the correct time as well, and that's about a service delivery aspect. That wasn't a decision that was taken easy, and the fact is, but it was allow us to be able to write a letter out to say, we would like to hear back from you within 14 days. We followed that up again with a second letter after 14 days. I've had quite extensive conversations with PERC in relation to this, and we did seek assurances that we would do that for category Bs and Cs. Initially, we had included some A's in that, but that's been revised, and that was an error that we've corrected, and that has been actually corrected within the last few weeks in relation to engaging with those individuals. I think what the learning we've taken from this is things do move on for people, and I think that's one thing that has probably prompted my, and Kate's touched on it, and it features in recommendation 2 of the PERC audit, is about the complaint capture form. When we looked at the complaint capture form and had a really lengthy discussion with that, there was not sufficient evidence that we were gathering in that initial capture that would allow our team of really busy individuals to make a really informed and well-rounded decision of where that should sit. And I think that's really clear that also in that capture form, I think we should be giving people the option and say, what would you like to happen from an early stage? And that brings in that part about early resolution, raising it as a learning opportunity for officers or whoever was concerned, but also if that one to explain what an actual complaint investigation entails. But also we're looking at now is to highlight, and we've updated the internet page, is about saying this may take a lengthy period of time for us to allocate and investigate. And I think that's one thing that probably I have taken my own learning from this exercise that we've done, particularly with Glade, is we probably need to be really transparent here about what we're trying to achieve is to make sure we're dealing with the correct complaints at the right time, which has been really useful. And I've taken a lot of really good guidance from the Commissioner at the PERC. We've had a couple of meetings regarding this now and how we can improve this in the future. I think the learning from SPSO is really important as well, and the fact is their volume across different public services is similar to ours, but they've dealt with it in a very, very clear manner about setting out what the expectations are, what a complaint means, which again brings me back to is I think the point of first contact here with anyone wanting to make a complaint to the police is probably the most important, about setting out what we want from them to be able to tell us what decisions we would make and how we can take this forward. So a lot of really good work and suggestions has come from this as well. We've also reached into the police office from Northern Ireland who did a similar type of exercise in the past, and I think there is other parts out there that people do this slightly differently. The complaint capture form, though, the work is ongoing, and we're going to again share that with PERC colleagues very soon about trying to get that a more complete, rounded version that, as I say, will allow us to make that informed decision. We have done quite a bit of work with looking at a task force that came in to assist, and even within PSD and the wider professionalism portfolio we have conducted days of action where we have allocated it to a number of different officers, including some of colleagues who are on the call today, to see how we can ensure that we're engaging quickly with people, but also allow us to look for that potential early resolution, because a lot of this is back down to explanation from the outset. I think probably one of the big parts of we again going forward is we continue to have Operation Glade and how we can improve in the future. I do think probably one to highlight is the categorisation part for us has been a useful exercise, and I think, as is in recommendation 8 of the PERC audit report, I think that categorisation and a bit of baseline data about how long things are actually taking us would allow us to sort of come forward to look at changing those timelines slightly. And the fact is the complexity of some of these, if you look at the A's and A pluses, are really complex and do require a bit of time. And I think that's something we need to probably look for a bit of equality in how we do our investigations compared to other agencies as well in a similar place. So this has been probably a bit of a real learning for the department. It's probably been a real opportunity for us to look at other options of how we can do things. I do appreciate sending letters out to say, do you still wish to continue? Might be off-putting for people. However, I think we need to be pragmatic, and the fact is we need to recognise that circumstances may have changed, and we need to make sure, as I say, we are investigating the right things at the right time. So hopefully that gives some sort of reassurance. We've revisited that just now, and we're not doing any more letters at this moment in time. We've got to a stage where we're comfortable with what we're doing. I think the fact is that we've got extra staff coming in is going to help us with that. But I'd really like to see now, if we get the complaint capture form changed, I would really like to see the difference in directing those complaints in the right way, not just in 2 months, 3 months, but 6 months from now. The difference in how we are dealing with these things, I think, will be huge. Again, Glade will continue as that improvement plan and try and build in other things. And I can see it developing in the other areas about how that first point of engagement, which is the really important part.
Thank you for the report and for this update, Stuart. Really appreciate that. Well, lots of really important kind of points there that you've made. I would like to open it up to colleagues first for questions, and then I've got some questions myself as well, just to see if anybody would like to come in just now. I mean, so, of course, Fiona, please.
No, all I'm saying is, Stuart, that's really, really helpful. I think the transparency, the evidence of reflection and looking to improve and pulling on elsewhere in the system is helpful, and I look forward to seeing how things improve as we go forwards. So no questions, just on that bit. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, similar to Fiona's reflections there. Really good to it feels a little bit like there is a bit of a reset, and you know, quite a necessary reset. So really appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that there's been an external focus as well. So where you've looked across other bodies that deal with volumes of complaints. Because again, yeah, Police Scotland isn't unique in this situation, and there are so many learnings to be had from other, you know, parties who have been there before. So I think that that's incredibly encouraging that there is that read across and sort of bringing external perspectives into the organisation as well. I can see how that would be very, very useful. As I've commented before, I think the fact that there is now more resources being allocated to this just demonstrates that this is something that is being taken seriously. With regards to the letters, you know, again, absolutely understand. Again, it's not unusual. I know that other bodies as well, where there are backlogs of kind of cases that need to be looked at. I absolutely understand why it would be relevant, you know, why it could be a course of action to write to the complainants and check, is this still relevant? Do you still want to go ahead with this? So again, I don't think that's unusual. I know of other public bodies that have done similar things as they've been kind of tackling backlogs. And you know, and in fact, I mean, it can be the right thing, whilst it can be off-putting, it can also be, it is absolutely the right thing from the public's perspective as well, because again, it's about using the resources, the limited public resources on the complaints that still matter and do matter. And you know, so you know, I don't think there is necessarily a massive conflict there. I think what is important is the tone of the communication, isn't it? So it's the how it's positioned, and how does it come across? Does it come across as if we're stopping this unilaterally, or is it relevant? Is there an option? You know, these are the options. If it's still relevant, absolutely we'll still pursue. It'll just take us a bit longer to get to you. So you know, I see Stuart nodding. It's the tone of the communication is, you know, I again, that goes back to that is just really important. From, you know, what Helen kind of said earlier, it's a perception of the public, and it's the perception is reality. So how transparent are we, etc., etc. But again, don't mean to belaboring the point. I think everybody understands it and is on the same page with that. I had sort of my question is, so obviously there is all this activity happening, and I know, Stuart, you did talk a little bit about sort of the gold structure in terms of the governance, and again, that's quite encouraging. So the one thing that's probably missing from me a little bit here is how quickly do you expect, so with all these things kind of falling in different places, and you know, the system kind of moving at a different pace, you know, the people being recruited, there'll be a training period. There's all these different actions that are being taken. So all of them, I would expect over time to start reducing the backlog, etc. But do you have an expectation, an expected timeline, aspiration as to how quickly you would expect some of these changes to, to demonstrate the impact that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I think with the extra staff, I say even coming in quite quickly, the training that's going to be provided to them is going to be very full on for that first part. And I think the really good thing is about getting them into that supporting the Nkaru side first of all, and actually that's that first point of contact, because I think that gives people a really good understanding of the nature of the complaints that we're getting, well supported by Kate's team and how we do that. And there'll be that, we're not just letting people loose here, it's about that making sure they're mentored and, a bit of shadowing over a period of time, which I think will help and bring them up to speed. So that's important, and we are hoping to have those people in post by December. So that's, hopefully a month from now we'll start to see some of that impact. I think by the next meeting of this committee, I would hope we would have them embedded for at least 2 months then. That would be really, really helpful. What I think is the bit that's hit me most is that initial contact form. And I think that's the one where we could make the biggest difference, is giving people choices from the outset to say what they would like to see happen. So the plan is that is taking quite a lot of work, and I want to make sure that one, it fits in with EQHRIA, it fits in with DPIA in relation to how we're changing that. Really, we're not changing it dramatically. What we're doing is asking more appropriate questions. I'd hope that we would have that at least in a test phase really, really quickly. And I'm looking at Kate, as her team have been heavily involved in this, of how we do this. I also think that there's a bit about IT, making sure that that's correct and how it lands on people coming into it. If we were in a position that we get that in for December or even into the early part of January, I think we need to give us that time of about another 3 months after that to compare the data from the same period the year before to say what was the difference coming in through that complaint portal. So I don't think we'll be fully ready for the next meeting. I think probably we'll be into the second meeting of 2025, where we would be able to provide some sort of credible data that we can compare against, but also allow us to at least try to show that difference if we can.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. That is really helpful. And absolutely, we'd rather you do it right and quickly, but more important thing is to do it right, because this is about resetting and sustainability, etc. going forward. So, I think it would be good to have an update at the next committee as to where are we with the program of activity, and absolutely at some stage we will expect to see the fruits of this being reflected in the quarterly performance reports, really, as well. So that's where we expect the dial obviously to be shifting. But I appreciate that it will take a little bit of time for that to start kind of filtering through, I think. So that's good. Just also kind of on the governance side of things, I'm not, and I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure to what degree the SPA are cited on kind of the Operation Glade sort of governance. We don't need to play this out sort of on the call just now, but I think a plea for me certainly would be to make sure that that police, that the SPA colleagues, our SPA colleagues are working, are being cited on, I think at least at least the key governance decisions, etc., so that both parties are sort of quite well appraised as to what is going on and how it's progressing. Just given the importance of this, I think it would be incredibly helpful from the SPA's perspective to make sure that our staff colleagues are I'm not saying fully integrated, because I don't kind of maybe overstepping kind of governance structures, but that at least there is the degree of visibility, which I'm sure there is already. But I just wanted to kind of, I think, say that from the committee's perspective. I think it is quite important. So. And I don't think there's any resistance to that from anybody. So that's good. Thank you, Stuart. I see you nodding, so I'll take that as approval.
Yeah, we'll make sure that happens.
Okay, good. That's really good. Thank you. Okay. So yeah, overall really positive and really, really positive and timely. And I think it, just in time. If I may say so myself. I think it's really good. Okay. Any more? No further questions, I think, or comments on this. Thank you. This and I'm conscious that we have been going for about an hour and a half now. We do have just a few more items in the break. You're flagging. Oh, sorry, actions. Yes, yes, thank you. Coletta's just been sending me messages as well, and I'm like, yes, thumbs up, and of course, you know, and my excitement about the positive developments. Right, actions. So let's get back to actions, which I have up here, and see if we are comfortable. Thank you, Paul. I'm glad somebody is paying attention to the actions. There we go. So we had just going in alphabetical order. So provide an update in relation to the backlog of non-criminal complaints at the next committee meeting. So I think we're content to close that. We've understood the actions that are happening around that. That's good. Park audit, bring an update to the next committee meeting on the recommendations and the progress to discharge. Again, I think we're comfortable with that. Yeah, very good. Then the next one which we had was around the action log following the closure of 2023-0106 CCC 002. Consider an informal session around irregularities in procedure and quality of service, consider including a discussion. I think that's the one that you were concerned about. Is that right, Fiona? So it's about that extra session.
So it may not be. So it's about the extra session, but it's also consider a critical assessment on current complaint categorisation types. And I'm not sure whether I've missed the fact that that has happened, and we'll have complaint categorisation in a different way, or whether that's part of the ongoing work. I'm just not. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm saying I'm not clear about how that's going to be tackled.
No, Fiona, this is. I'm so glad you bring this up, because that was kind of one of the, as I was reading through the papers, that was one of my questions as well. Obviously, Stuart, you talked about the categorisation, and you talked about how you work with PERC with the categorisation. I don't think we've seen the detail. And again, I was I was questioning myself, thinking, have we seen something, or because we knew you guys were working on the categorisation, but I'm not sure, and I'm looking to our Police Scotland colleagues here, if you've actually brought the, we have categorised them now, and this is what this is. I have to admit, I don't think we have necessarily seen that in this forum with sort of any level of detail. Stuart, or have I totally missed it?
I think probably the paper covers about the actions that we've taken to categorise those in the unallocated to make them on a par with how our colleagues are categorising. I just wonder if maybe that's something that maybe taken forward we could add to our non-criminal complaint performance aspect, to say the numbers that we've got allocated at that level and the categories that they are, and also we could still maintain an update to this committee in relation to those unallocated going forward. I don't know if that would answer it correctly or not, and I'll probably look to Kate to see how easy we could be able to produce that.
Here, can I come in?
Yeah.
So I think when I look across the UK, I think I know more about what people in England and Wales are complaining about than what people in Scotland are complaining about. I'm not so I thought when we looked at complaint categorisation, it was, what is, Mrs. Angry from Ayrshire unhappy about? Is it about response time? Is it about attitude? Is it about investigation? So it may be that there are subtleties there that I'm not seeing, that I'm more than happy to be advised of. So that's what it was. It was more the categorisation, and I see Darren's come in, and he may be able to just reassure me that it's all in hand.
Darren, please.
Yeah, I think probably just noting the benchmarking we did with Northern Ireland and England and Wales, and recognising there's probably two different types of categories that are used. So there are the allegation types, and obviously the benchmarking report reflects on some potential opportunities in that space. But I think equally going to some of the conversation earlier today, which was around about the thematic areas of policing practice which give rise to complaints regardless of category. So, for example, we've previously looked at the issue of stop and search. The vehicle stops was picked up today, and that's something that certainly the situations that give rise to complaints is a thing which is is formally captured in by the pony, whilst and I think is certainly captured and explored more broadly by the IOPC in England and Wales. So certainly the benchmarking reports have been shared into Police Scotland, and I think the intention is for us to have kind of further discussion at the National Complaint Handling Development Group in that regard.
Yeah.
Okay. In which case, I'm content with that action, whether or not we want to close that or close it and then take it more in the holistic approach. I'm content with either option.
Thank you for that, Fiona, and thank you for the clarification, Darren. I think if I understand this correctly, the first category of categorization, so to say, Darren, that you just referred to there, Stuart, I think that's relevant for the form, for the form that you're doing, right? So it's the capture of a complaint, the capture of really clear kind of headings of complaint, which I think we call allegations. It's just, and what is it that the complainants would like to, what's the resolution that's being required or being wished for in this case. The categorization of the non-criminal kind of backlog into different categories is probably more on the basis of urgency, magnitude, complexity, that type of stuff, right? So that's sort of slightly different. That's at the substance of it. I think I think we could probably close this action as such. So it's good that it is going through the the one that's taking place on the 5th of December, Kate, looking at you, the National
Complaint Handling Development Group.
Yeah. Development group. It's the development I was missing. I was like, which group was it? Working group? What was the development group? So so the fact that that is going through that and there is that visibility, I think is incredibly good. I think it would be good for this committee because, you know, Fiona, your questions is kind of still there, you know, and I am quite struck by your comment that, you know, at least on the face of it, you seem to be more aware as to what people are complaining about in other parts. So maybe there's just something there for us as a committee then to say, you know, because Darren has done that good work sort of in benchmarking, and I know that right now is the moment that if you were to, you know, with you, I mean, if Police Scotland was to look at how we categorize the different heads of complaints and all that. So just now it seems like this is an opportune time to do it. I think it would be quite good for us to understand what is the thinking within the space. So if you are, you know, primarily keeping the way that you're currently recording and categorizing complaints, it is obviously your prerogative. But it would be good for us to understand what is the level of scrutiny that went into, you know, we currently record complaints in such a way, it may be different to how other police forces do that. There is reasons for that. We think it's advantageous or not advantageous to us. So I suppose maybe just a little bit of analysis, a little bit of a justification, explanation to us as to this makes sense to us and we can make it work and we can give you the data that you need to help you understand what's happening, or actually this maybe doesn't, or maybe we're tweaking what we are capturing slightly and how we capture the heads of complaint or the allegations. So I'm just looking for a little bit of a reassurance that internally Police Scotland has considered this question of there's all sorts of stuff comes into us. We have to somehow assign things into different categories. Is it appropriate for us just now? And I'm not talking about sort of the categorization of the non-criminal complaints, because I think I understand what's happening in that space. So just so that we as an oversight kind of committee have that assurance that you have considered it and you believe that that at the moment is the most appropriate way, is the most pragmatic way, whatever it is, you know, but I think, Fiona, would you feel that that would be helpful, Fiona, Paul, if we just had that assessment from Police Scotland as to where they're changing it, we're not changing it, but we've had a look at X, Y, and Z, etc., etc. Stuart, I hope that kind of makes sense. So I'm not asking you to go down either change it all, keep it all, but just a bit of a, you know, why do you think that what we currently record, the way we record this is, as I say, pragmatic, suitable, whatever? What do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, I think it's probably one that we could go away and have a wee look at about how, and I think we could probably reflect it in that performance report a bit better. I think it's probably where you would be able to see it a bit clearer. And I do take on Fiona's point about knowing what the themes are and what that might be. I think that's something that we would probably have a closer look at. But maybe one that Helen, Kate, and I, and probably linking with Darren, could maybe take off table and have a bit of a look at, because I do think there's probably maybe make it a bit more clearer in the performance report from the outset. Well, that's a small summary at the start or something, I don't know, but maybe that's one that we can certainly go and consider. But I see Helen might have her hand up as well.
Helen, please. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. I guess to add some further reassurance on the ACC's comments, we do break that down when we're looking at sort of divisional commander recommendations in terms of what are the trends coming out of NCARU in relation to the categorization and that type of thing. So we do have that visibility within the organisation. Maybe it's what we can maybe try and do is translate that into some of the kind of high level ones within the performance report, where we do try and work through the emerging trends in terms of the categorization. But maybe it's almost like the so what, or what are the priorities, or what are you focused on, that we can then maybe articulate. I think that's one part of that categorization. I think the other bit is that is the categorization and our approach to the type of allegations, are we comfortable that that is fulfilling what we need to do to be able to capture the data within it? So I think we can take away those 2 points and come back to the next committee, if that's all right.
I think that'd be incredibly helpful. Thank you. So good luck, Colette, with trying to capture that as an action. But let's record this as a separate action, and then we can track that. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for that really good challenge there. Okay, which I think only leaves one last action on that rolling action log, which is the action from the meeting, held literally to the day today, but last year, which again was around explore what the increased demand against the static or reduced workforce would mean from a risk-based perspective in terms of achieving objectives. And I think that's what, in my view, that's what the debate today and the paper has kind of provided us a really good insight into. So there is a response to the increasing demand by additional resource and working smarter as well. So really, I think we're quite content to close that one, right? Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, right. So that leaves us, we are now an hour and 40 minutes into the meeting. We still have got about 3 agenda items in the public session. Would colleagues prefer to have a really quick sort of 5-minute comfort break? Yeah, before we finish off the public agenda and then go straight into the private agenda. Is that okay? So shall we maybe take 10 minutes? Stretch our legs, get a cup of tea and all that. Okay, that's great. I shall see you all at 10 minutes to 12. Thank you. Right. Thank you, everybody. So without any further ado, we are into the next agenda item, which is the agenda item 8, HMICS Vetting Review Action Plan Progress Report. And Helen, I believe you're presenting this one, please.
I am, thank you very much, Chair. So to touch very briefly on the content of the report, the purpose of the report was very much just to update the committee on the progress of the recommendations from the HMICS Assurance Review of Vetting, which was published in October 2023. Within that report, there were 15 recommendations and 5 areas for development. So we know that one of the recommendations sits with the Scottish Government around the PEC's work and around legislation around vetting, and obviously there's been some significant developments in that over the last little while, which we continue to support and develop our thinking around. The other remaining recommendations, one was closed in January 2024 and 5 were submitted for closure in early October. Of those 5, 3 are now closed and 2, whilst HMICS are noting our progress in respect of that, do require a bit of additional work. And I know that there's appendix that's been provided with the whole list of the breakdown of the recommendations. So it's recommendations 4 and 8 that we continue to do a bit more work in that had been recommended for closure. And this is around a clear and robust policy for conditional vetting clearance and the review of vetting clearance following misconduct as well, and the process is in place. So we are doing a bit more work around that, but hopefully heading towards closure for those as well. In addition, one further recommendation has been submitted for closure, which is recommendation 13, which looked at a review of specific cases. So I present that and give you the reassurance that the work continues around our discharging all of these recommendations and working towards our overall sort of vetting approach. As I mentioned, there have been developments through the PEC's bill work as well that we are continuing to be involved in and continue to look at how we enhance and improve our vetting processes. So very happy to take any questions, but hopefully that gives the committee the reassurance that we are continuing to work through these recommendations.
If all you'd like to come in.
Yeah, just very quickly, are HMICS content with the progress on this?
Yes, no, sorry, yep, no, that. They certainly are. We maintain regular engagement in respect of that. And as I say, that dialogue around the closure of these. So we are working through the recommendations and have good action plans and progress in relation to those that haven't been closed yet, work in progress, working through them. We have recently just welcomed a new head of vetting into Police Scotland who started this week. So I know that she will continue to drive forward the work around all of this.
Super, thank you.
So, I see no further questions on this agenda item. I don't have any myself, so thank you for that. It's duly noted, which means that we can move on to the next agenda item, and that is the 23-24 committee annual report. And Darren, you have already alluded to the fact that this work was happening, and so yes, we're looking forward to you talking to this, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is for noting, recognising it's essentially a retrospective look back at the business of the committee and key performance data over the previous year. So this is our 4th annual Complaints and Conduct Committee report. The cover report covers 2 things. So as well as the annual report itself, it's recognising additionally text that has been included in the annual report and accounts, the SP's annual report and accounts for last year. So a bit of background here was part of the Angelini review recommended that the SP annual report and accounts should on the one hand account for the business, the scrutiny that's applied by the Complaints and Conduct Committee in the space of complaints, provide detail on performance, and also provide a statement on its assessment of the suitability of Police Scotland complaint handling arrangements. So the annual report and account statement does provide that suitability assessment. It provides a high-level summary of kind of key performance data, but we recognised at the outset that to do justice to this, it made sense to have a bespoke committee-specific annual report that allowed more depth in terms of the business of the committee. So, as I say, this is our 4th report. Previous reports have tended to focus predominantly on complaints in line with the Angelini recommendation, but this year the challenge was set that we should rightly cover the broader business of the committee, particularly as that's expanded over the last 12 months to cover a wider range of areas, including the Preventions Professionalism Programme, vetting, sexual misconduct generally. So that's probably the key distinction here in terms of this report. I think the other thing I would want to note as well is that, like previous reports, but recognising the wider scope, this time we present multi-year data and draw additional insight from analysis of that data within this report. Recognising that Police Scotland report data to the committee on an annual basis, it tends to report against the previous year on a 5-year average. So I'm very grateful for Police Scotland for, as they normally do, providing that kind of that confirmation of each annual data set to allow us to do that more granular trend analysis, but also in providing additional layers of data that haven't necessarily come to the committee before or consistently. So, for example, in respect of the discussion earlier around about allegation categories, you'll see that the report goes into a deeper dive. Whilst Police Scotland do provide summary information in the report, there's a deeper dive there in terms of allegations received across all categories and subcategories, and also looking at the determinations around about the same. So, as I say, that's probably the other distinction here in terms of beyond the retrospective look back and bringing all that information together. It is that additional analysis. So I'm very grateful the report was shared with Police Scotland and the PERT for accuracy, for that additional information, and has also obviously been shared with yourself, Chair, in terms of your own covering forward, and obviously articulating the forward look in line with the committee's agreed priorities, both in the short and longer term. So grateful for everyone's input. My intention is to publish the report formally on the authority website, out with the committee page, but on our complaints pages, and probably to do some communication activity around that as we normally do. So the report for noting, I would encourage you to particularly look and consider the data tables in there, and how they provide additional insight, which will hopefully help the committee, or assist the committee in its future consideration in the months to come. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Darren, for being the driving force behind the report, and for your presentation, and for highlighting, as you say quite rightly, some of the sort of additional layers of data in there for those of us who are really into tables and data. Paul, you've got a question.
I mean, maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but how can we have an annual report for a committee with data in it the committee hasn't seen before?
So the majority of the data, Paul, the committee has seen before, and I think
minority I'm concerned about.
Yeah, what I would say, Paul, is that I have had engagement with Police Scotland around about. So, Police Scotland do provide this information at the higher level already. This is a more granular level of detail. So it's not necessarily information that's not come to that depth. However, I think that the key thing, and probably recognising some of the conversation that we had at our last committee meeting, or the last but one, where we agreed to close off a further Angelini recommendation in this space, was a recognition that actually Police Scotland going forward would look to provide this level of detail in annual reports going forward. I don't. My own observation is actually some of that more granular level of detail is most helpful where it allows you to compare on a year by year as opposed necessarily on an in-year basis. But absolutely take the point.
Yeah, but I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think it does need caveated, but it is a committee report, and if the committee hasn't seen it, then it's not the committee's, it's the Complaint Services annual report. As I say, I may be splitting hairs, but I just want to put the marker down.
Thank you for that, Paul. I think, you know, I think it is a fair challenge. And, you know, and I understand, as I say, Darren's rationale exactly for, you know, some things, because it's multi-year, it's kind of like we need to look at it on an annual basis. But absolutely, so maybe there's just a little bit of sequencing in there. You know, the data is available, obviously, you know, because it to that more granular level of detail, it obviously has been shared for the purposes of being inclusion into this report. There is absolutely nothing that stops that, you know, that more granular data coming to us as part of our work plan, maybe in some of the kind of, you know, earlier committees that fit into the reporting cycle. So I think it's a fair challenge, Paul, and certainly one I think that Darren and the team need to take away. And yeah, we need to consider how we make that data more visible to the committee, because I think it's absolutely fair. So, but that, nonetheless, I think you know, I'm just like, as I say, I'd like to thank Darren for the production of this. It's good. It's good that it will be published. Again, it does increase, I think, the transparency around complaints and now contact data as well. And for me, the fact that this year it has been expanded into areas wider than just complaints is really quite important, because, you know, as we're seeing, also in relation to the legislation currently obviously going through the parliamentary process, complaints and conduct are related. And certainly in the public's eye, and, you know, and more practically as well. So it is good. I think it's only right that we've expanded the scope of this report as well. So thank you for that. Okay, I see no further. Oh, Fiona, yes, please, of course.
So what have we decided about? Is it just the name of the report then? Are we saying it's the Complaint Services report with a committee report, or how are we going to handle that?
Okay, so well, there's two ways. So I think this is the committee's report. I think this is the I see what you mean. So from a governance perspective, what do you mean? So we either take the data that we haven't seen out, or we change the name of it. But I mean, I would argue by the fact that we as a committee have seen this report now in this current form, we have seen the data. So I'm not entirely sure that it is as big of an issue as maybe I'm making it out to be just now.
Maybe Paul has an elegant, I'm sure Paul will have an elegant solution.
I just think it needs caveated the data.
Yeah, so if there's
sentence stuck in there, if Darren can craft
agreed.
a sentence or something that might, you know, explain that. And I don't think it needs to come back here, because that would be 99.99% of it is fine. It just needs caveated, and it's just a point for the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that's a scientist solution right there, Darren.
It's a politician's solution.
Politician's solution, very good. So basically, yeah, just a caveat on the bits of information which have not been, you know, discussed by the committee, I think, in the format, and I think it can just be a footnote of some sorts. Yeah. Okay. Fabulous. Very, very good. Okay. Good. I'm glad. So, okay. We've sorted that. So thank you for that, colleagues. So this leaves us to cover off the Complaints and Conduct Committee's work plan, which is attached. I think I'm down as speaking to it. I wasn't proposing on saying much other than I think it is relatively self-explanatory. One thing that I will say, so having had a look at it, there are quite a few kind of annual reports that might potentially, at the moment, they're down as TBC for the June session next year, and I'm thinking, considering all the other annual reports that are already considered in June and the few extra ones which have been added as TBC, I think we might just need to spread it out a little bit. But I can take that away with our committee services and kind of just hooking and liaise with Police Scotland as to what's realistic, when does it need to come, what's the right cut-offs, but also, so as I say, so that we don't get a lot of the annual reports to us in the same session. I mean, we could spread the load, I think, a little bit more evenly. So that's a commitment, I suppose. That's an action on me, is to liaise with them. This, if colleagues are agreeable to that. But other than that, I was just proposing, to note it as it is, with that caveat around the timings of the annual reports coming to us. Okay, I see no objections. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So I believe this concludes, unless I'm totally missing something, this concludes the public session of our agenda. And the following items 11 through 15 will be taken in private. So Colette, I'm